we bring you the unvarnished truth of law enforcement. This broadcast features unfiltered, unedited, and completely raw footage. Join us as we step onto the front lines of justice, providing a transparent view of the critical moments that shape our society.
Ma'am, you need to leave this property now. Trespassing.
I'm not leaving. I own this hotel. What's your legal basis?
Don't play games. Hands where I...
The lobby was quiet, except for the low hum of the air conditioning and the dull roll of suitcase wheels across polished marble. Morning light filtered through tall glass doors, casting pale reflections on the floor. At 8:12 a.m., the calm broke. "Mom, you need to leave this property right now." The officer's voice was firm, rehearsed loud enough to turn heads. His hand rested near his belt, not touching the weapon but close enough to send a message. The woman facing him did not raise her voice. She did not step back. She simply looked at him, eyes steady. "I am not leaving. This is my property." The words landed softly, but they carried weight. The officer frowned. He glanced at his partner, then back at her tailored coat, her calm posture, her dark skin. Guests slowed their steps. A bellhop stopped pushing his cart. Someone near the elevators lifted a phone, slightly pretending to check messages. "Sir, we received a call about an unauthorized person refusing to vacate hotel premises. You match the description. You're trespassing." The officer spoke faster now, irritation creeping in. The woman inhaled slowly. The scent of fresh coffee drifted from the breakfast area behind her. She could hear ice clinking in a glass somewhere. Normal hotel sounds. Ordinary. Absurd in contrast to what was unfolding. "I own this hotel," she said. Her tone did not change. "I am also a sitting judge. You are making a serious mistake." The officer let out a short breath through his nose. He shook his head once, as if amused. "Ma'am, people say a lot of things when they don't want to leave. I need you to cooperate before this escalates." He gestured toward the exit. A few guests exchanged looks. A woman whispered something to her husband. The air felt thicker, heavier. "This escalated the moment you assumed I did not belong here," the woman replied. She reached into her bag slowly, deliberately, and paused. "I am going to retrieve documentation." Her movements were careful, measured, the kind taught by long experience with authority that can turn violent without warning. The officer stiffened. "Keep your hands where I can see them." His voice echoed slightly in the high-ceiling lobby. A security camera above the front desk blinked red, recording everything. The woman held up a folder unopened. "These are ownership documents. Deeds, contracts. My name is on all of them. I suggest you call your supervisor now." For a moment, no one spoke. The officer looked at the folder but did not take it. Pride flickered across his face. Backing down here in front of witnesses would mean admitting he had acted on nothing more than assumption. He straightened his shoulders. "Ma'am, refusal to comply can result in detention. Last warning." The word detention rippled through the lobby like a dropped glass. The woman's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Somewhere behind them, a phone camera shifted angle to get a clearer view. "You already crossed the line, officer," she said quietly. "And everyone here is watching." The tension in the lobby froze in place, but the story did not begin there. To understand how a calm morning turned into a public confrontation, you have to step backward years before that moment, before uniforms and assumptions collided. The woman standing near the front desk was named Evelyn Carter. At 54, she moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent decades being questioned, doubted, and underestimated. She grew up on the south side of Chicago, the daughter of a postal worker and a nurse who worked night shifts. Their apartment was small, the walls thin, the neighborhood loud. Evelyn learned early how to focus despite noise, how to keep her head down and her eyes forward. She was 12 when she first stepped into a courtroom on a school field trip. The judge that day was a black woman. Evelyn watched the way the room shifted when she spoke. People listened. Authority did not come from volume or fear, but from command of the law. That image stayed with her. Through high school, college, law school, through student loans, through clerking jobs where she was mistaken for support staff, through interviews where partners asked if she would be more comfortable in community outreach instead of litigation. She graduated top of her class, passed the bar on her first attempt, built a reputation as a meticulous attorney who knew statutes better than most prosecutors in the room. By her early 40s, she was appointed to the bench. Her rulings were firm, precise, and often uncomfortable for those who relied on shortcuts. She cited constitutional law the way others cited weather, calmly, exactly. The hotel was never meant to be a luxury trophy. Evelyn bought it 3 years earlier quietly through a holding company. The building had been failing. Staff underpaid. Maintenance ignored. She saw it as an investment and a statement. A black woman owning commercial property in a downtown district that had quietly resisted that reality for decades. She kept the staff, raised wages, installed new security systems. Her name was on every document, every deed, every tax filing. She did not announce herself when she visited. She believed ownership did not require performance. The officer confronting her had a different story. Officer Daniel Brooks was 38, 8 years on the force. He grew up in a small suburb where everyone knew each other, where police were thanked at grocery stores and waved at during parades. He joined the department straight out of the academy, eager, confident, praised early for being proactive. His file showed commendations for response time and initiative. It also showed something else. Complaints. Not enough to end a career, but enough to form a pattern. Stops that went longer than necessary. Encounters where tone escalated without clear cause. Internal reviews that ended with counseling, retraining, notes about improving communication. Supervisors described him as assertive, sometimes stubborn. Someone who did not like to be challenged in public. Someone who believed hesitation looked like weakness. On the morning of the incident, the call came in vague. A report of a woman refusing to leave a hotel lobby claiming authority. No threats, no disturbance, just discomfort. Brooks responded with his partner already filling in gaps the call did not provide. Unauthorized person. Possible fraud. Someone trying to intimidate staff. When he saw Evelyn, his mind settled. She did not look like the owners he was used to dealing with. No entourage, no suit jacket with a hotel logo, just a black woman standing calmly where in his mental map she did not belong. By the time she spoke, by the time she said she owned the property, his decision had already been made. And every word after that was filtered through the need to be right. Neither of them knew yet how expensive that moment would become. The lobby had shifted. What began as a routine space of passing strangers was now a circle of attention. People were no longer pretending not to watch. They stood near columns by the elevators, near the front desk phones, angled just enough to record without announcing intent. The air carried a low murmur, fragments of disbelief and curiosity mixing with the hum of the building. Evelyn remained where she was. She placed the folder on the edge of the front desk, not pushing it toward the officer, not pulling it back. Just there, visible. An invitation and a warning at the same time. Her posture was straight. Her hands rested calmly in front of her. She had learned long ago that agitation would be used against her. Officer Brooks took a half step closer. He did not touch the folder. He looked past it as if acknowledging it would give it power. Mom, I am giving you a lawful order to leave the premises. Failure to comply will result in further action. His voice rose slightly the way it did when he felt control slipping. Evelyn nodded once, slowly. Then she spoke clear enough for everyone nearby to hear. I have provided you with the opportunity to verify ownership. I have asked you to call a supervisor. You have refused both. That choice is now yours alone. A hotel manager hovered near the front desk, hands clasped tight. He glanced between the officer and Evelyn, unsure which authority carried more risk. A housekeeper paused near a service hallway, eyes wide. A guest whispered, "She said she owns the place." Another replied, "No way." Brooks felt the crowd closing in. He was aware of the cameras now, aware of the stillness. Backing down would look like weakness. Continuing forward would assert command. He chose the familiar path. "Turn around, ma'am. Place your hands behind your back. You are being detained pending investigation." The word detained landed hard. A collective inhale moved through the lobby. Evelyn did not turn immediately. She looked directly at Brooks. In that moment, there was no anger in her expression, only certainty. For the record, she said, "I am complying under protest. You are detaining the legal owner of this property without probable cause, and every second of this is being recorded." She turned slowly. Her coat brushed against the marble counter. The sound of cuffs being drawn from Brooks's belt was sharp, metallic, final. Someone gasped. A phone camera zoomed in. As the cuffs closed around her wrists, the weight of the moment settled fully into the room. Not because of force, but because of silence. No shouting, no struggle. Just a woman being restrained in the building she owned while strangers watched, and history quietly took notes. Brooks avoided looking at the folder on the desk as he guided her toward the security office. He did not see the way the manager's face drained of color. He did not hear someone mutter, "This is wrong." He only felt the forward motion of a decision he could no longer undo. And behind them, the folder remained where Evelyn had placed it, unopened. The hallway to the security office felt longer than it was. The carpet muffled footsteps, but every movement sounded loud inside Evelyn's head. The cuffs were tight metal, biting gently but insistently into her wrists. Not enough to bruise yet. Enough to remind her that this was no longer a misunderstanding. This was force. Guests pressed themselves against the walls to make space. Some looked away. Others stared openly, curiosity mixed with discomfort. A child asked his mother why the lady was in trouble. The mother did not answer. She pulled him closer and kept walking. Inside the small security office, the air was stale. Old coffee. Cleaning solution. A monitor on the wall showed grainy camera feeds from around the hotel. The same lobby they had just left. Frozen in time, still holding the moment where everything went wrong. Brooks instructed Evelyn to sit. She did carefully, the cuffs forcing her posture into an unnatural angle. The chair was hard plastic. Cold. He stood over her for a moment as if expecting resistance that never came. "You're going to stay here until we sort this out," he said. His voice was lower now. Less performance. More tension. Evelyn met his eyes. "I hope you understand what you've done." She did not raise her voice. She did not plead. She stated a fact. Brooks turned away. He stepped into the hall and spoke into his radio. His words were clipped. Detained subject. Claims ownership. Requesting verification. As he waited for a response, a flicker of doubt crept in. Not enough to undo anything, just enough to unsettle him. Minutes passed. Each one stretched. Evelyn listened to the sounds outside the door. Distant elevator chimes. Voices drifting past. Life continuing indifferent to the injustice unfolding in a small room. In the back of the patrol car when they moved her again, the silence was heavier. The plastic seat was slick. The smell sharper. Disinfectant layered over something old and unpleasant. The door closed with a hollow thud that echoed in her chest. As the car pulled away, Evelyn stared straight ahead. She did not look back at the hotel. She did not need to. Every detail was already cataloged in her mind. Time, location, witnesses, language used. The legal violations stacked neatly one after another. In the front seat, Brooks adjusted the mirror. For the first time since the encounter began, his jaw tightened. The radio crackled with an incoming message. His shoulders stiffened as he listened. He said nothing. He did not turn around. The drive was short. Too short to undo anything. Long enough for consequences to begin forming. Neither of them spoke. The car moved through traffic like any other. Just another police vehicle on a morning route. To the outside world, nothing unusual. Inside, two futures were already diverging. The booking area was brighter than the security office, harsh fluorescent lights that left nowhere to hide. The sound of keyboards, distant radios, phones ringing. Normal police station noise. Evelyn stood out immediately. Not because she looked out of place, but because she did not look like someone who belonged there. An officer at the desk took her information without looking up. Name. Date of birth. Evelyn answered calmly. Each word precise. Each syllable recorded. Brooks stood a few feet away, arms crossed, jaw set. He avoided eye contact. Then the folder arrived. A senior sergeant stepped into the room holding the same folder that had sat untouched on the hotel desk. He flipped it open as he walked, eyes scanning lines of text signatures, seals. He stopped mid-step, looked again. Slower this time. His posture changed. He looked at Brooks, then at Evelyn, then back at the documents. "Sir," he said quietly. "Who is this?" Brooks cleared his throat. "Claims she owns the property. Judge. Says she's a judge." The sergeant did not respond immediately. He turned the folder so the overhead light hit the embossed seal clearly. He read the name aloud. Evelyn Carter. Owner. Managing entity. His finger slid down the page. Then to another document. Appointment certificate. Judicial commission. The room shifted. The sergeant's voice dropped. "That's not a claim, that's a fact." He turned and walked briskly toward an office at the back. The door closed. Voices murmured inside. One phone call, then another. The waiting stretched heavy and uncomfortable. When the door opened again, a lieutenant stepped out. Gray hair, calm eyes, someone used to fixing other people's mistakes. He looked at Evelyn first, not with suspicion, with recognition. Judge Carter, I am Lieutenant Harris. I need to apologize for what is happening. We are verifying everything now. Evelyn nodded once. Her wrists were still cuffed. Lieutenant Harris turned to Brooks. Where did you detain her? Hotel lobby? Report of trespassing? Harris exhaled slowly. She owns the hotel. The words hung in the air. No anger, no accusation, just truth. Brooks's face drained of color. The confidence he had carried all morning collapsed inward. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. He glanced at the folder again as if hoping the letters might rearrange themselves. Judge Carter is also a sitting judge in this jurisdiction, Harris continued. This should have ended the moment she offered documentation. Silence pressed down. Someone at the desk stopped typing. Another officer looked away. The cuffs were removed. Metal unlocking metal. A small sound. Final. Evelyn rubbed her wrists once. Then she looked directly at Brooks. This did not need to happen, she said. But now it will be addressed. Brooks said nothing. He could not. The realization had fully landed. This was no longer about authority. It was about accountability, and it had just entered the room. The apology did not end the story. It started it. By noon, the videos were already online. Shaky footage from the lobby, clearer clips from the security office hallway. A guest's phone capturing the moment the cuffs came out, each angle telling the same story. A black woman calmly asserting her rights, an officer refusing to listen, authority turning into embarrassment in real time. By evening, the footage had crossed platforms, millions of views, tens of thousands of comments, the same words repeated over and over. Unbelievable. This happens every day. He thought she didn't belong. The hotel's name trended alongside the city police department. So did Evelyn's. She did not post anything herself. She did not need to. The facts were enough. 2 days later, the formal complaint was filed, detailed, methodical, every minute accounted for. Violations of constitutional rights, unlawful detention, abuse of authority, failure to verify documentation, racial bias influencing enforcement decisions. The complaint named Officer Brooks individually and the department institutionally. Internal Affairs opened an investigation within hours, not quietly, publicly. Brooks was placed on administrative leave. His badge and weapon collected, his patrol car reassigned. For the first time in his career, he was on the other side of procedure. The investigation moved fast, too fast for comfort. Body camera footage, radio logs, dispatch recordings, training records. Prior complaints re-examined under a harsher light. Patterns that had once been brushed aside were now laid out in timelines and charts. The department released a statement, carefully worded, respectful, regretful, promising accountability. It did not stop the pressure. Civil rights attorneys requested meetings. Community leaders demanded answers. The city council scheduled hearings. The mayor was asked a simple question in front of cameras. How does this happen? Evelyn attended the first hearing in person. Not as a spectacle, as a professional. She sat at the table, hands folded, listening. When she spoke, she did not raise her voice. This was not about my title, she said. It was about the assumption that I did not belong in a space I legally owned. If it can happen to me, it happens to people without cameras, without documents, without leverage. The investigation concluded 3 weeks later. The findings were direct. Officer Brooks had acted without probable cause, had ignored presented evidence, had escalated instead of verifying. His actions violated department policy and constitutional standards. Brooks was terminated. No ceremony, no appeal that could survive the record. 8 years on the force ended with a letter and a locked locker. The city settled the civil case months later. The amount was significant, enough to make headlines, enough to force policy changes. Mandatory verification procedures, bias training tied to discipline, clearer standards for detention in private property disputes. Evelyn donated a portion of the settlement to legal aid organizations, quietly, without press releases. She returned to the bench the following week. Same courtroom, same seal on the wall. When the clerk announced her name, the room rose. Justice had not been loud. It had been steady, and it had left a mark that would not fade quickly. What happened to Evelyn Carter was not a misunderstanding. It was a textbook violation of the law, and understanding why matters just as much as how it ended. Under constitutional standards, a police officer cannot detain an individual without reasonable, articulable suspicion that a specific crime is being committed. Discomfort is not a crime. Assumptions are not evidence. In this case, there was no report of theft, no disturbance, no refusal to comply with lawful hotel policy. There was only a vague claim that someone did not belong. That is not legal grounds for detention. Once Evelyn identified herself as the property owner and offered documentation, the officer's legal authority to continue the encounter ended immediately. Everything that followed crossed into unlawful detention. There is also the issue of private property rights. Owners have an absolute legal right to be present on their own property. Law enforcement does not have discretion to remove an owner simply because their presence makes others uncomfortable. When police intervene in private property disputes, they are required to verify ownership before taking enforcement action. Failing to do so is not a minor oversight. It is a violation of due process. The psychological layer is just as important. Bias does not always appear as anger or hatred. More often, it appears as certainty. The certainty that someone does not belong. The certainty that authority should not be questioned. Once that belief forms contradictory evidence is ignored, documents become suspicious. Calm becomes defiance. This is how bias overrides training policy and law. For viewers, there are practical lessons here. If you are confronted by law enforcement in a situation like this, stay calm. Keep your hands visible. Speak clearly. Ask what crime you are suspected of committing. Ask whether you are being detained or are free to leave. If you have documentation, offer it without sudden movements. If possible, ensure the encounter is recorded either by body cameras, security cameras, or witnesses. Most importantly, understand that compliance in the moment does not mean surrendering your rights forever. The courtroom exists for a reason. Documentation, witnesses, and patience are powerful tools when used correctly. Evelyn Carter's case ended with accountability because the evidence was clear and the process was followed. Many similar cases never reach that point. Not because the law is different, but because the spotlight never turns on. So the final question is not whether the officer was wrong. That has already been answered. The real question is how many times this happens, without cameras, without titles, without a judge's voice to force the system to listen. What would you have done in that lobby? And if it happened to someone you love, would they have the same outcome?
Seeking the truth is our ultimate mission. We dig deep to hold power to account, relying entirely on facts and data. Remember, the records never lie. Thank you for tuning in and supporting our work.